Hola, hola. Muy buenas para todos. Hola, gente linda. Había una locutora que trabajaba en televisión, creo que era locutora, no me acuerdo su nombre, que siempre decía, hola, gente linda, y me encanta, me encanta. Eh, Así que bueno, feliz 2025 calendario. Falta poquito para el Año Nuevo de Diseño Humano, que es cuando el sol se da a la puerta 41. Y va a ser el 21 de enero. Casi todos los años cae 21, a veces 22, cambia la hora, pero bueno. Y hoy quiero comunicar, bueno, eso era una, ¿no? El año nuevo, que para el año nuevo va a haber un regalito que es una clase de RA abierta para todos y que es muy importante porque justamente RA siempre insistió en que el diseño humano era para los niños, entonces esta clase es sobre cómo educar a los niños. Es una clase de una hora más o menos y va a estar dada en el sistema que yo estoy utilizando, que es aprender con la voz de Ra, a partir de otras explicaciones, artículos, ejercicios. eh, Hay muchas cosas para hacer y no todo lo tenemos que explicar nosotros cuando tenemos la posibilidad de que ustedes lo escuchen allá. Y ahora lo van a escuchar porque les voy a compartir algunos fragmentos de, a ver cuántas son, cuatro clases de las ocho que dimos hasta ahora. La primera clase de este taller, que se llama el Sistema de Diseño Humano, eh, la di abierta. No la puse toda entera en YouTube porque era una clase, pero sí les puse varios fragmentos para que se dieran una idea. El tema es que llegamos hasta la clase 8 en diciembre, suspendimos por las fiestas y mañana vamos a retomar con la clase 9. Y esto va porque, bueno, hay ocho clases grabadas que pueden acceder si les interesa este taller. A ver, esperen. Eh, que está mm, acá. Estos son los temas. Yo lo expliqué cuando di la primera clase, pero seguramente hay gente que no lo vio. Son 15 conferencias, de las cuales ya dimos, como les dije, 8, y están agrupadas en estos grandes temas, ¿no? Ahora estamos a punto de hacer el programa. Y ahora van a ver unos pedacitos de algunas de las que hicimos, como ya les dije. Les pido para ustedes más que nada que escuchen la voz de Ra. Algunos pueden cerrar los ojos, a lo mejor son visión interna y les ayuda. Es como si estuvieran escuchando un actor. La voz de Ra es impresionante. Puede haber personas a las que no les guste porque no todos somos para todos, pero en general es una voz que impacta. Van a tener ahí los subtítulos, pero porque yo ni me acuerdo de puse acá, y esto te lo preparé hace unas horas. Eh, pero bueno, el tema es ese, ¿no? Eh, Muchos de los cursos te doy, no los tradicionales, ni el Vivir tu Diseño, que sí tiene grabaciones de Rave, el ABC también, por ejemplo, el ABC de Rave tiene una clase entera de 1 hora y media donde Ra explica el rojo y el negro. ¿M? La cartografía también. ¿M? Y después, todos estos cursos tienen la voz de Ra y tienen parte de explicación, obviamente dada por mí, y muchas personas saben que hay un grupo específico en Facebook donde tienen documentos, donde hacemos ejercicios, donde compartimos dudas. Eh, yo cada vez que doy uno de estos talleres siempre saco ejercicios nuevos, como ese que les dije hoy. Tenemos tantos centros definidos. ¿Qué les pasa? El diseño humano es un eterno recordar y volver a escuchar y volver a leer, porque estamos constantemente invadidos por el condicionamiento. No solo el que heredamos de los seres de 7 centros que estuvieron 90.000 años en el trono, gobernando el mundo, sino de todo el no ser que nos rodea. ¿M? Pero bueno, de a poco vamos viendo cómo hacer para aprovechar este gran conocimiento que da trazo a este plano. Bueno, seguro que me olvido algo como siempre, pero vamos a pasar a entonces visualizar estos fragmentos que Ra nos ha explicado ya. Si les interesa participar en las clases que quedan de este taller, que son 6 o 7, bueno, no sé, son 15 y dimos 8, así que 7, está bien, sí, 7. Escríbanme, pueden escribirme a d.humano.universal@gmail.com. Y les cuento, el precio es un precio muy especial, así que aprovechen. Bueno, voy a hacer una pausa, así son estos, son los pequeños fragmentos. Ahí vamos. Bueno, vamos con el fragmento de la clase 4, el ser de 7 centros.
Well, hello there, and welcome to our second week. Welcome to part 4 of this complete guide to the human design system, where we get to our theme this week, which is going to be evolution, and something that, well, it's one of the most delightful subjects for me. I guess more than anything else, one of the privileges that comes with the human design system, one of the privileges that comes with the knowledge is the ability to literally be able to be a part of evolution as evolution takes place. And one of the most extraordinary things about the mechanics of the human design system is the way that it indicates so clearly the transition that we have had in our process, that is the evolutionary transition that we've been moving through. A transition, by the way, that in terms of the discussions that we're going to have over the next 3 days, a transition that moved from what we refer to as Neanderthal to the movement to what is the modern human being, or the so-called modern human being. But we're going to see it within a very different language. We're going to see it within the language of centers. And before I can even talk about that, that is, before I can begin our journey, which is today the seven-centered being, I really need to take you into a fundamental, I guess the very core of the deepest areas of the knowledge in human design. If you look at this illustration that is up here, in looking at this illustration, what you're seeing, aside from the pleasantness of it, the rave mandala. You're seeing this triangle split down the middle that is the central theme of this illustration. In a sense, what you're really looking at is the core of what life is. And the core of life is about cognition. Cognition. We have in the studies of human design, we can go down to very, very deep levels, something that we work at the Science and Differentiation College in the work of PHS and Rave Psychology. That is to go deep, deep, deep beneath the surface of the line to be able to understand the mechanics underneath. Beneath every line is a color. And beneath every color is a tone, and beneath the tones are the bases. Each of them carry unique value for us in terms of interpretive value, analytical value. But perhaps the most extraordinary is tone. If you look at the way in which the levels beneath the line are illustrated, they're illustrated by shapes. So, for example, when we are looking at color, we're looking at a six-sided object. And when we're looking at tone, we're looking at a triangle. And when we're looking at base, we're actually looking at a square. This triangle of tone, the triangle of tone is the same triangle in that sense, in terms of its dimensional structure. It's the same triangle as the triangle of the body graph. It is, in a sense, the microcosm of the macrocosm that the body graph represents.
Okay. Vamos a pasar a la segunda tanda, que es la clase 5.
System, and today we come to, we come to us. We come to the nine-centered being. You're going to have just this view standing behind me today. And this view is actually the chart, the just now chart. The just now chart looked at in terms of it being a birth for 20 GMT today. And in looking at this and having this in the background, though I will refer to it in many ways, it really is there as a reminder, in a sense, of what this journey is all about, what this knowledge is all about. That is, it is a revelation in the sense that it peels away this veil and allows us to look inside and see very, very, very clearly, very specifically, the possibilities that exist for each and every one of us to be able to fulfill our potential on this plane. But I want to continue with our evolutionary theme. I want to continue with this story, in a sense, that began yesterday. This story of the rise of the deeply left strategic seven-centered being. And it is this deeply strategic seven-centered being that laid the foundation for the world that we live in. And as I pointed out yesterday, it also has, of course, resulted in the way in which our philosophies and our religions, our moralities, all of these things, the way in which they have been constructed and the way in which they are offered to us in this age are all byproducts of this seven-centered strategic process. I brought you to this point of 1781. That is the point of the discovery of Uranus, and in the context of human design, the advent of the nine-centered being, the beginning of the arrival of nine-centered beings onto this plane. That point, that 1781. One of the most significant shifts in that, because again, we're talking about a difference in species. I know that not for everyone is this something easy to grasp, because of course, our concept of species is, the distinction that we make between ourselves and primates, as an example. I think all of us would have recognized, had we had the opportunity to meet a Neanderthal somewhere, would have recognized that that was another species. But you see, the outside here is not the story anymore. I mean, the thing that distinguishes us so clearly from Neanderthal, Neanderthal had this huge frontal structure in the cranium, and had much more similarities to its history than to its future. Let's put it that way. We would easily recognize it. But when we're dealing with the difference between ourselves and the seven-centered being that is what is referred to as Homo sapien, it is not so easy to see that distinction, at least on the surface. As I said, if we were able to have consistent body temperatures, we certainly would have a way of being able to recognize clearly that, at least at a biophysical level, that we are different from our predecessors prior to that time. Unfortunately, we don't have, in that sense, that kind of data. And
Esta es la sexta clase donde habla del rave.
discovered Uranus, Pluto was in the 41st gate, initiating the beginning of a new cycle. And in 2027, when again we come to the end of this great cycle of the cross of planning, again we come to Pluto in the same place, Pluto in the 41st gate. And again in that interregnum, this is the first time, obviously, this is one cycle of Pluto around the sun. And what we have is a Pluto interregnum, or a Plutonic interregnum. In essence, Pluto truly has been ruling us since 1781. Now, what do I mean by that? Pluto is about, death and resurrection and transformation and all kinds of things. Within the context of analysis in human design, it represents truth. And one of the things to be clear about in terms of this cycle that we are a part of, that began in 1781, that there is absolutely no question that the movement of Pluto, every step along this way, is changing the way in which life operates, and is changing the way in which life is programmed. Over many years now on Jovian Archive Radio, and earlier on the website through an audio program known as Who Says, I have been talking about the influence of Pluto as it moved through specific gates. For example, when Pluto was in the fifth gate, the impact that Pluto would have on all forms of life, including every cell in life. And I talked about how that was a trigger for biological shifts that are taking place. Think about Pluto today. Pluto today is in the 10th gate. And the 10th gate is an absolutely essential aspect to what we refer to as integration in design. That is a 4-channel system, the 10th gate connecting potentially to the 34th gate in the sacral center, to the 57th gate in the spleen, to the 20th gate in the throat. The reality is that 10th gate and its connection to the 57 and the 34, that it deeply connects the position of Pluto to many, many forms of life, including our own, and is having a deep impact on the immune system of both our species and all of the major mammalian species on the planet, along with all the plants. In other words, as we watch Pluto moving through the wheel, it's not just simply a matter of, Pluto's in this gate and does it affect me or not? The kind of thing that you would think of doing in terms of, any kind of daily program analysis of how you're being conditioned. No, this is something much deeper, much more profound. That is, it is something that is an underlying theme that is operating through all of humanity. We are in a time of deep, deep, deep transition.
Cuando él habla de que Plutón está en la puerta 10, esto fue el año que él dio este curso. ¿M? Este curso lo dio en el 2008. Así que bueno, pero es interesante porque la puerta 10 se conecta, es una puerta de los canales de integración. la 10 con la 47 o la 10 con la 34 o, perdón, y la 10 con la 20. Así que cualquier planeta que esté definiendo la 10 o cualquier otra puerta que sea la 57, la 34 o la 20, existe ese posible juego de combinación, porque acuérdense que integración tiene cuatro puertas el juego, no solo dos. A veces uno se olvida de esas peripecias del cuerpo gráfico. Bueno, ven, esto es un poco lo que les decía. El tema cuando habla así, muestra detrás de él un, una imagen donde esto no está traducido. Bueno, cuando ustedes hacen este taller, tienen en ese grupo exclusivo del Facebook esto traducido al español. Entonces, mientras ven la clase, pueden tener esto impreso y o lo pueden tener ahí y lo pueden mirar. Y saben lo que dice que normalmente es lo que nos pasa con estas claves del no ser. Bueno, vamos a la última entrada.
Is hard to miss in any conversation amongst people who understand this knowledge, and the keynote is the not self. It's an odd term, isn't it? That not self. And it is so appropriate in a sense. I mean, look at, the way in which we are configured. This is one of the things to understand about the nature of being a bioform and what it is to be genetic. That is, in order for us to survive, we have to have viable reproduction, which means that we have to be attracted to things that are different than us. I mean, you cannot create a viable gene pool if you keep on marrying your brother or sister. We learned that a long time ago. So the fact is that everything about the way in which we are designed as human beings is that we're designed to be attracted to the other, attracted to difference. That isn't something that's psychological. That is something that is built into us at the deepest genetic level. And so when you look at somebody's design, what you're really looking at is points of imprint and points of reception. In other words, we are nothing more than those areas in us that are, imprinted by the planets, the activations that you have in your body graph, and then all the openness that you have in your body graph. Most of what you see in your body graph, if you look carefully, most of what you're looking at is white. That is, most of what you're looking at are receptors. We are mostly receptors. And so what that means is that there is a majority of what we are in that sense that's constantly being attracted to this thing and that thing and the other thing and pulled in this direction and that direction and so forth and so on. The not self is living out a life based on what you are pulled towards, what you are attracted to, what you are conditioned by, rather than living out what is in fact your imprint. In other words, what makes you essentially, potentially, somebody that's different than other beings, somebody that's able to live exactly in that sense with their own authority and be able to realize their potential. So let's take a look at this not self, and I want you to understand two things about the not self. The first thing to understand about it is that this is where we are most deeply conditioned. In other words, it is through our openness that we take in the conditioning of the other. And again, because we're designed to be attracted to it, we want it. Oh, do we want it? How sad it is to see so many human beings who are going to spend their entire lives, chasing after these flying things that are not them, wanting to be this and that and the other thing, not them. And of course, because it's not you, because you're chasing after what you cannot be, well, you can never feel complete. You can never feel whole. You can never feel good about yourself. You can never love yourself. You can never have respect for what it is that you are because you don't see it, because you can't. So the first thing to understand about our openness is that this is what takes in the deep, deep, deep conditioning. But the second thing, the most devastating thing, is that it goes directly to your mind. Not only does it go directly to your mind, but it's going to condition the way in which your mind is going to think and the way in which you are going to make decisions with that mind. This is the not self. And it is a deeply, deeply, deeply powerful thing. You never get rid of it. You never get rid of it. It is one of the great ironies of openness. You see, if you're unaware and you're operating according to what your mind tells you to do, you're never going to live your life. You're never going to have that life. Never. And all of those open centers become your enemies, guiding the way in which your mind distorts the nature of what it thinks its purpose is. But that openness is also something else, because when you are correct, when you're operating out of your strategy and authority, what happens is that openness becomes the source of your wisdom.
Vale. Bueno, eh, hasta aquí hemos llegado con este compartir, que espero que les haya gustado. Son pequeñas perlitas. En realidad me resultó bastante difícil elegir porque estas clases, o sea, las personas que han participado, están participando en este taller, están muy contentas con esta información. Pues son cosas que por ahí no es que no se han mencionado, pero va profundo en ciertos temas que no siempre se explican tanto, que uno se pregunta y dice, ¿y esto? ¿Por qué? No sé, a mí me resultó, bueno, no soy una buena referencia. Todo lo que, casi todo, no todo, lo que da, comenta y cuenta y nos enseña, a mí me parece maravilloso. Así que, en fin. Bueno, me voy a comer, que tengo hambre y es tardísimo. Espero que estén bien y en breve les posteo más información sobre la clase abierta de la educación de los niños. ¿M? Bueno, a ver, ¿cómo tenía que salir de acá? Creo que con esto. Muchas gracias a todos por ser y estar y nos seguimos compartiendo, seguimos contando, seguimos participando. Así que hasta prontito. Chao.